Now, Sri Lanka's stock market, after months of losses last year during the long drawn-out COVID-19 pandemic restrictions on trade and economic activity, turned around in the January to February period to become the best performing stock market in the world and recoup most of its losses. However, the past month, the index has seen seesawed and with a mix of trading halts and positive days, wiping out most of the major gains that we saw during the January to February period. As of yesterday, however, the ASPI gained some momentum, inching close to a double-digit year-to-date gain of 8.03%, while the S&P SL20 crossed the mark at 10.18%. With that, I thought I'd invite Chairman of the Colombo Stock Exchange, Dumith Fernando, to speak a little about the ongoing controversies, claims, and probably the outlook for the stock market.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you for joining us. My first question, I thought maybe with the stock market giving away most of the gains it made during this year, what's really going on here?
Yeah. Let's first put that in perspective. The stock market, as you said, is up about 8%, maybe a little under that after some today's performance. But first of all, if you look at markets around this region, we are in a small bunch of markets that are actually up in that 6 to 8% range.
Right.
There's Thailand, Taiwan, Singapore, India, and Sri Lanka, which have performed at that range. So most global markets have actually had pretty weak performance this year. Even if you take markets like in the US, in the S&P 500 or the UK markets, the Chinese market,
right.
Many markets are down for the year. So we have to put that in context that we've actually had a pretty robust performance. We are still one of the better performing markets this year. In January, the market was up about 29%. Then it came off about 14% in February. There were a number of factors, I think, that contributed to this. First of all, the market went up very rapidly. When a market goes up 30% almost in a month,
right.
Clearly you will see opportunities for profit taking, and certainly some investors did do that. Secondly, we had a bit of international news around the sovereign debt repayment. Some international investment banks put out some research reports that were not quite in our favor.
Right.
So that led to some of the foreign investors also continuing to sell down, and then this year we've continued to see foreign outflows. But the local market was very active. The local investor base was very active. And then there was this concern about the circulars we issued at the Colombo Stock Exchange, which was essentially a request for information from stockbroker firms. Right. But this was utterly misinterpreted by the market as something that was aimed at bringing restrictions into the market. I think that had an impact on that as well.
But there has been a lot of discussion and debate about the role the SEC and CSE have in clamping down on broker credit and the impact that had on the market. Yeah. Is there any truth to this?
Let me give you the facts. So at the end of January, the broker credit outstanding was 7.5 billion rupees roughly. And as of the end of February, that number was 10.5 billion. So I think it's pretty clear that there was no clamping down.
Right.
As I said, the CSE nor the SEC put any hard restrictions on any stockbroker from lending. And I think a number of stockbroker firms have continued with their credit policies. I can't speak to all of the firms. I know in my firm, the amount of forced selling has been zero. So there's been a lot of misinformation. Unfortunately, through social media, WhatsApp groups and Twitter, we've seen a lot of misinformation. But the reality is there was no actual clamping down. Now, having said that, I will say it is a duty of a stock exchange, of the regulator, to continue to support a market that will be sustainable in the long term, not just have very quick runs in a very short period of time. So we will continue to support the market in a way that we will have sustainable growth.
You mentioned about social media, but I've seen several claims on social media and questions raised about about how ethical, the appropriateness of you being, you heading a leading stockbroking firm and also being the chairman of the Colombo Stock Exchange. Yeah. Isn't this a concern?
Good. You're asking the tough questions, and I'm glad you are. The stock exchange is a company limited by guarantee where 15 stockbroker members are actually the owners of the equity. So since the stock exchange launched 35 years ago, every single chairman of the stock exchange has been a representative of a stockbroker firm, and that's rotated across different firms. So this notion, if there is a notion or questioning the appropriateness of the role of the chair of the stock exchange being also someone from a stockbroker firm, it's just part of how it is structured. Now, there are obviously questions rightfully about the governance. Now, we take a very serious approach to governance. We have strict confidentiality agreements. Every single board meeting we sign off, not as a one-off, but at every single board meeting, we sign off a conflict of interest disclosure. And we have signed non-disclosure agreements, as I mentioned. And many times, in fact, the regulatory arm of the stock exchange acts independently, knowing that some of the board members are representatives of broker firms. So we have gone a long way in maintaining that independence. I think if there's any notion that that has been violated, I think once again that's misinformation. And as I said, that's how the stock exchange has been for 35 years. But yes, we are pushing to demutualize the stock exchange so the ownership and the governance can be changed, and that's one of our key agenda items between the CCC.
Very quickly before we let you go,
yeah.
Where do you think the stock market will go from here? What's the outlook going forward? Yes, we have seen a good rally, and then we've seen a massive slump, and then we see the stock market bouncing back. But from the CSE and SEC point of view also, how will you work together to ensure that there's stability?
Yeah. So I think I sat here in May of last year with you and said this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for buyers, and that proved to be right. The market was up 60–70% after that. I would say, you had a very active and high-growing January. The market has come off. It's presented another buying opportunity. Basically, you have much better valuations. Most of the sectors in the stock exchange have dividend yields well north of what interest rates are today. And the earnings outlook is strong. There was very good news today about the Chinese swap of $1.5 billion, which will help the story around foreign reserves. With the vaccinations going on, we are able to open up the country for tourism. So the fundamentals are all headed in the right direction.
Thank you very much for your time here.
Okay, thank you.
We had with us Dumith Fernando, Chairman of the Colombo Stock Exchange. We'll take a short break now. Please stay with us.